Welcome back to our YouTube channel, Faith and
Freedom.
Rick and Tammy Gall. Okay, hopefully you've been following us, and this is actually our second video we're putting out, and we're continuing on with all our research where we want to inform you all of what it cost America. So this segment we're going to talk about the cost of freedom. What is providence? Because as in last time we were talking about how George Washington was providentially protected. People tried to shoot him like 5 times and they missed, the Indians and the enemies, and it was like amazing. So I was going to read a little excerpt of
they actually tried to shoot him more than 5 times. He had 5 bullet holes in his coat.
Yeah, and 2 horses.
Yeah, 2 horses shot out from underneath him and all that.
So our point in like bringing these things out, and our whole reasoning for making our videos, is to wake Christians up, Americans up, and to fight and keep fighting for what we have, and so we don't lose it. And you know, in the schools nowadays, they're not being taught American history. They're changing the books, and so that's very scary. So to go along with that, like Ronald Reagan, this is one of our little plaques for our wall. Freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. That was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
So for our grandchildren, we're speaking out and speaking truth, and time for the church to get out of the churches and the pews, not meaning you don't go to church on Sunday. Of course you do that. But after you go to church, get out there and speak out on social media, to your neighbors, to your family. I mean, obviously, as people know, we've had some intense conversations, but that's okay, you know?
Yeah.
I found out through our friend Steve Light, he's in seminary, and other people that I've heard, the Jewish community, that's what they do, is they sit around and debate things, and that's what brings out more truth and conversations. Sure. And it's okay to agree to disagree sometimes, but we still need to speak the truth in love. Go ahead with what you have.
Well, hey, real quick, just to remind you, the scriptures we're using as our basis is Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. Psalms 33:12, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. In Galatians 5:1, it was for freedom that Christ has set us free. So just a reminder that that's what we're about. I wanted to touch on something we mentioned, came up in our first video, and that was, bringing up President Trump. And some people, they have a hard time supporting Trump because of his immoral lifestyle. He's been divorced and all that kind of stuff. But just as a reminder, we see incidences in Scripture where immoral people were still used of God mightily. Yeah, we had, King David fell to immorality during his kingship, but we see even people like Cyrus, king of Persia, and then we had King Nebuchadnezzar was used mightily in the scriptures. We see that. So, but what's interesting is we see that God is using Donald Trump because he is, even though his lifestyle has not brought it about, there are all kinds of pastors that are around him now, and he's asking for their input. So that's what gives us confidence, and he is supporting pro-life, pro-constitution judges. Some of you may not know this, but he has Congress, along with the president, has set a record number of pro-constitution judges in the circuit courts. 12 his first year in office. That is a record for since the circuit courts were established in 1891. Now to date, it's been 22 total And there's more to come. And now we have, Judge Gorsuch was set in his first year. Now we've got Roberts is resigning and retiring, and now an opportunity to set another constitutional pro-life judge. And this is what's turning the country around.
Praise
And even
God.
the prophetic word that has come, that we've watched, Lance Wallnau and some of these others, and we'll have this stuff on our YouTube and
There are
information.
still prophets today,
Yep.
by the way.
Yep,
God
absolutely.
still speaks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, God's not sleeping. He's still doing the same.
He's still working in
and
me.
he's working in the affairs of men. And that Trump will turn the country back on its moral foundation was some of the prophetic words that have been given, and that he will turn the country around in that sense and put it back on its constitutional moral foundation. Now, there's a lot of work to be done. We're not saying it's Pollyanna and all that, but we're just saying it is moving in that direction, and we're seeing it across the country. People don't necessarily like the way Trump responds to people or responds to certain things, but he's very blunt and very straightforward. And but he is doing things. What he does is bigger than what he is sometimes says in a off-color way or whatever that you might not like it.
And-
But he's very straightforward. So.
And we believe that God providentially. So I looked up the word providence to go along with this, because we do support, we said in our last video, we totally support President Trump because we believe 100%, like he said, the prophets have spoken. He's in, the Christians arose and voted him in, and Americans, the good hardworking Americans. But anyways, the providence of God is the benevolent guidance of God. How he formed this country in the very beginning, which Rick has notes on. The men
Signed
who
the Declaration.
signed the Declaration and all the founding father documents, and the wisdom that they had was totally biblically based. They used the Bible to begin all that. So for some Christians to say, well, Christians shouldn't be involved, oh my gosh, that is so ignorant. We started this country with Christians, with the Puritans and the Pilgrims and the Shakers and all the Presbyterians and all the denominations that left, their countries to come here for freedom for religion, not from religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the government forming a religion. We're free of all religions. The Christian faith is the most free faith. We don't force anyone to believe like us. But Jesus said, follow me. It's your choice.
Yeah. Real quick, keep your thought on
yeah.
that. A quote from John Adams said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So, that's John Adams, very strong that. Benjamin Franklin said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. So, and there's others, but...
yeah, and if you want one of these books, like we said last time, it's the Constitution and then quotes from all the founding fathers in the beginning.
Some nice quotes.
We can send you one of these.
Yep, free.
Free. There you go. You can show your kids and your grandkids what our Constitution of America is all about.
Right
and
in
it's
your
based
pocket.
on the Bible.
Yeah, the
Based
whole
on Bible
Constitution is in your
biblicals.
pocket. The most powerful Constitution ever written in the history of the world can all be put right in your coat pocket.
Yeah, pretty cool.
But there's some great quotes, like Tammy said, in the front. So we'll send you that free if you let us know.
We're one generation away, and about being strong and what you believe in. And as Christians, should we, get active like that? And is it all just about love, peace, joy, all that kind of thing? But even though it's not totally relevant, but Jesus himself, I was reading John 2:15, when he got a little excited when he went into the temple, he said he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves and the money changers doing business. When he had made a whip of cords, he drove them out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen and poured out the changers' money and overturned the tables. He said, "Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise." So my point in that is just that Jesus got a little excited about things when he believed for his Father's house. And
pretty radical.
yeah, that's radical. He made a whip.
Yeah.
So, so many people think, oh, we got to be meek and mild. And,
How many pastors out there would use a whip?
yeah.
Not recommending.
So the point is, we're trying to pull you people out of the pews. Last week, if you didn't watch our other video on this is what made me righteously angry. Like with Jesus in the temple, this church, when the Jews were being killed, they sang their hymns even louder.
So they couldn't hear.
The
train
Jews
whistles
screaming. And I'm like,
at people.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the church was headed because of all the prayer warriors that are praying for our country. And the world is praying for our country. The world is praying. That when I see on Facebook and different posts, people from Australia, England, Spain, all over the country, or the world, they're praying for America because they know that America's like the last frontier of total freedom, total you can have free enterprise and all of those kind of things.
Yep.
So anyways, but you have some good facts here on what it cost for our country to be free and to be formed is amazing. And when we see kids urinating on the flag, which stands for freedom, which stands for our founding fathers that formed this country, I mean, I'd like to see them go to Saudi Arabia and do that, or Iran, or China. But it sickens me, and what people have given for our country, and then the disgrace and the disrespect, and it's not even being taught in our schools. But anyways.
Yeah, it's so important we get back to, understanding how this country was formed and the price that it was paid. And that's what I think Tammy and I are wanting to do with this video, is just focus in on that. And so we want to talk about, just briefly here, the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. When they signed that, they signed their death warrant because King George at the time ordered the army to put down this revolution, and he said capture and kill every one of the signers of that declaration once he found out there was a document and it was made public. But I just want to show you, there is a book out, you can get that. It's the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, and here's some stats. 5 were captured and tortured and then died. Of the 56, 12 had homes ransacked and burned, 2 lost sons serving in the Revolutionary Army, 2 had 2 sons captured and imprisoned, 9 fought and died from hardships of the war. 24, and who were they? 24 of them were lawyers and jurists, 11 were merchants, 9 were farmers and large plantation owners. I want to give you some stats here. These are specific things that happened to a few that you may not be aware of, but I'm just going to read a couple here. But Thomas McKean was so hounded by the British that he was forced to move his family almost constantly. He served in the Congress without pay, and his family was kept in hiding. His possessions were taken from him, and poverty was his reward. Carter Braxton of Virginia, a wealthy planter and trader, saw his ship swept from the seas by the British Navy. He sold his home and properties to pay his debts and died in rags. And then, the Battle of Yorktown was when Washington got, actually the British cornered and saw an opportunity to actually win the war. And this is where the war was won. But Thomas Nelson owned the house that the British General Cornwallis had taken over as his headquarters. So, but Thomas Nelson told Washington, he said, to open fire on the house and destroy it. He said he didn't care. And Nelson died bankrupt, and they did. And the war was won at that point. Francis Lewis had his home and properties destroyed. The enemy jailed his wife, and she died within a few months. John Harder, the last one here, was driven from his wife's bedside as she was dying. Their 13 children fled for their lives. His fields and his grist mill were laid to waste. For more than a year, he lived in forests and caves, returning home to find his wife dead and his children vanished. So, conclusion, freedom is never free. We thank these early patriots as well as those patriots now fighting to keep our freedom. And it's time we get the word out that patriotism is not a sin. And the 4th of July has more meaning to it than beer, fireworks, hot dogs, and picnics.
Amen.
But that's a strong word, and that's what we want to do. We're all about celebrating freedom. You know, our founders, they told us in reading some of these accounts, they wanted the 4th of July to be a time of celebration and all that. But we, as a generation, so many generations away from them, have to look at this historical record and look at what our founders did to earn this freedom. They paid a big price, the ultimate price, and it's time for us to recognize it and fight equally for our freedoms today as they did back then. We can do it right now with the pen by writing your congressman, voting, getting involved, helping godly, good, moral people run for office. Help those people to do that. Give to these organizations that do these things. So that's what we're encouraging you to do in your part as a good citizen and American of the greatest nation on God's green earth.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen. So we just are hoping, this is stirring you up to stir. It says, the Bible says, stir one another up to good deeds and to love. And so if we know, it's like a mindset. If we know God created America for a purpose, for Him, as most people know, that we've shared the gospel like no other from our nation with missionaries. It's sad to say now I hear there's countries sending missionaries to America. When you look at New York City and some of these big cities and all that's going on with all the blatant sin out there now. But why does that happen? Because the church isn't being the church.
Right. It's time.
The church has been under a bushel. That little song we used to sing as kids.
Yeah.
Hide our light under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine.
Right.
And so how do we let it shine? There's so many ways, obviously. You love your neighbor, you help your neighbor. But just like I always say, it's like with your own kids and with our society. What is true love? It's not letting someone go off of a cliff. It's not letting them believe something that's a lie, It's speaking out. Jesus said in the Bible, speak out for those who cannot speak for themselves. So the abortion issue alone, I'm very proud to say we attend Oasis City Church, and our pastor did a sermon on abortion, and he did a very good job. How, of course you love the woman, the girl, but abortion is still sin. It's still wrong. You don't endorse that. Mm-hmm. And so for the church to rise up and not do what this church did back in the time when all the Jews were being killed, 11 million people, how did they get killed? Because the church just sat there and did nothing. Mm-hmm. They were afraid. And first it's ignorance because they didn't know. But then they said in the book that we read on our other YouTube, they did know, but then it's like too late. So we're trying to say, don't let it get too late. Yeah. As the church, hold on to our freedom that God in His providence, the benevolent guidance of God, who kept George Washington from being killed many, many times, who started this country. And so many people in this younger generation, they're just like, no big deal. And they're actually going towards socialism now.
Yeah.
The colleges are teaching socialism and communism and atheism. So that's why we're spurred on to do what we're doing here.
Yep. Well, hey, that's it for now. We appreciate it. Again, faith and freedom. It goes together.
Get out there and speak the truth in love, and vote, and speak what is right and true.
Amen.
Awesome. See you next
week.
time.